welcome directly to you, the listener, to today's deep dive. We are really, we're thrilled to have you with us for what is going to be an incredibly intense conversation.
Yeah, it really is.
But right before we jump in, do us a huge favor. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the show. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you these deep dives.
Absolutely.
So today our mission is to unpack a highly provocative, ultra-long, and really incisive new ebook. It's titled Gaming Male Spaces Before Gamergate Woke Betrayal, and it's by Conrad Riker.
It is a massive, massive text.
Right, and it's written specifically for a men's rights and red-pilled manosphere audience. The book claims to explain the history of our institutions and exactly how they were captured by feminists and Marxists.
Which is a huge claim to unpack.
Exactly. And look, if you find yourself hooked by the end of this deep dive and you want to read the full, unfiltered arguments yourself, you can buy the book on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
You should also follow the author at Conrad Riker on Substack.
Yeah, definitely do that. But before we get into the weeds, we need to set the stage regarding how we're approaching this material today.
That is a crucial point.
Our mission here is to explore a highly polarizing text, so we want to explicitly state that we are not endorsing or taking sides on these politically charged viewpoints.
Right. We're remaining totally neutral.
Our job today is to impartially report on the content to help you understand the exact arguments being made in the source material. We're laying out his claims purely so you're informed about the history of captured institutions according to this book.
Just to give you a high-level overview to start, Riker's core premise is that there was once a golden age of gaming.
A golden age.
Yeah, an era he characterizes as being built purely on merit, high-level skill, and raw male creativity. And he argues that this specific cultural space has been systematically hijacked by Marxist and feminist ideologies.
But the book isn't just about video games, right?
No, not at all. That's what makes it so expansive. He uses the gaming industry as a microcosm. He believes the fall of hardcore gaming is basically the canary in the coal mine for a broader collapse of Western civilization.
Okay, let's unpack this.
What?
It is, because the way Riker describes this paradigm shift in gaming is so vivid. He draws this massive contrast between classic gaming and modern gaming.
Right.
In his view, classic gaming was this digital frontier of unapologetic challenge. You either had the skills to beat the boss or you got a game over screen.
Brutal meritocracy.
Exactly. But he claims that meritocracy was invaded by an ideology that replaces that grueling challenge with what he derisively calls therapy sessions and diversity workshops.
He frames it as a complete inversion of cultural values. Where games used to prioritize the rush of a hard-earned victory, he argues the modern industry now prioritizes safe spaces, hand-holding, and ideological compliance.
And he brings very specific anecdotes to back this up. For instance, he points to Ubisoft.
Oh, the armor design issue.
Right. Riker alleges that internal corporate memos showed developers were forced by inclusion metrics to scrap historically accurate, battle-worn armor designs just to meet female inclusion quotas.
And he contrasts that forced inclusion with the mobile game Diablo Immortal.
Oh man, the monetization on that one.
Yeah, Riker notes that Diablo Immortal made $525 million by exploiting well-documented male addiction patterns through predatory monetization, all while the studio was preaching inclusivity on social media.
It's a critique of massive corporate hypocrisy,
Yeah.
wearing the mask of progressive social justice while draining the wallets of their core demographic.
Exactly. And then he holds up Elden Ring as the ultimate counterexample.
Defiantly apolitical.
His words exactly. Elden Ring sold 20 million copies precisely because it offered pure challenge, no lectures, no difficulty sliders.
But to understand how he got to this cultural split, he goes all the way back to Gamergate. And the way Riker totally redefines what Gamergate actually was is pretty wild.
The mainstream narrative is that it was a coordinated harassment campaign.
Right.
Riker flips that entirely. He paints Gamergate as a biological immune response.
An immune response, that is such a clinical way to describe an internet controversy.
He used that terminology deliberately. An immune system attacks foreign bodies. Riker argues hardcore gamers were viscerally reacting to an ideological virus. He says they were vomiting at the mommy state corruption of their meritocracy.
So he claims critics entered these male-dominated spaces asking for basic fairness, but then executed a bait and switch.
Right, swapping out objective competitive standards for vague participation metrics.
What's fascinating here is how the author connects these digital battlegrounds to real-world ideological shifts. He takes this mommy state corruption concept and builds an entire psychological framework around it.
Which leads to womb communism.
Womb communism. Walk us through the mechanics of that argument because that is a massive conceptual leap.
It really is. Riker claims that modern progressive leftism isn't just a political philosophy. He believes it's driven by a misdirected maternal instinct.
How does he get there?
He argues that modern women in these activist spaces are suppressing their natural biological drive for motherhood. Since that instinct has to go somewhere, they project it onto society at large.
So treating society like helpless infants.
Exactly. They treat society as needing a nanny state, and conversely, they treat productive, competitive men as dangerous predators who need to be constrained or exiled to protect those infants.
And he tries to back this up with evolutionary psychology. He cites Robin Dunbar's research, which suggests that 65% of female conversation involves social evaluation, or gossip, compared to about 35% for men.
He pairs that with David Buss's research. Riker argues that things like cancel culture and the Me Too movement have nothing to do with justice.
He calls them industrialized mate suppression tactics.
Yes, and he uses a very specific literary reference, Lysistrata with hashtags.
I had to look that up. Lysistrata is an ancient Greek comedy where women withhold intimacy to force men to end a war.
Right, and he's applying that to modern social media. He's arguing that modern feminism scales up weaponized gossip into digital lynch mobs. They bypass due process entirely.
Relying on reputational destruction.
Exactly. To him, the hashtag is the modern equivalent of the ancient strike.
He goes even further by pathologizing the activists themselves. He cites NIH studies claiming far-left activists have significantly higher rates of anxiety and cluster B personality disorders.
Things like borderline personality disorder or narcissistic traits. Medicalizing his political opponents is a stark rhetorical choice.
Right, saying you aren't fighting a philosophy, you're fighting a pathology.
He brings up UCLA fMRI brain scans from 2020 to hammer this home.
The ones about the prefrontal cortex.
Yes. According to Riker, subjects who are parroting progressive slogans like diversity is our strength exhibited dampened prefrontal cortex activity.
The logic and critical thinking center of the brain.
Exactly. He's claiming their critical thinking centers are literally shutting down.
He uses this to argue that the woke NPC meme, a non-player character that just repeats programmed lines, isn't a joke, it's a clinical diagnosis. You're dealing with ideological possession.
But that raises a massive question. Where did this programming come from? Riker traces what he calls the woke mind virus directly back to academia.
The Frankfurt School in the 1930s, Theodore Adorno and Herbert Marcuse.
He argues these Marxist academics realized traditional class warfare wouldn't work in the prosperous West, so they repackaged Marxist conflict theory into identity politics.
White versus minority, male versus female.
Right, and he focuses heavily on Marcuse's 1965 concept of repressive tolerance.
Wait, let's break that down. Repressive tolerance sounds like a total oxymoron.
The idea, as Riker interprets it, is that to have a tolerant society, you must be intolerant of right-wing movements because they are inherently oppressive.
So silencing conservative voices is framed as societal self-defense, not censorship.
Exactly. He sees that as the blueprint for modern cancel culture.
He also leans heavily on Yuri Bezmenov, the KGB defector. Riker points out Bezmenov's warning about a four-step Soviet process to subvert Western nations, starting with demoralization.
And Riker argues that modern diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, DEI, are a perfect mirror of those 1970s Soviet demoralization protocols.
Which brings us to how Riker defines the word equity. He argues the modern academic definition is a Trojan horse.
He redefines equity as the deliberate punishment of excellence in order to mask mediocrity.
And he provides startling real-world examples. He points to California allegedly banning accelerated math classes in middle school.
And the Minneapolis public school system. In 2020, they dismantled advanced math programs under equity policies. By 2022, their math proficiency plummeted to just 37%.
He even mentions leaked emails from the University of Michigan where professors were allegedly caught rigging calculus grades based on skin color, giving downward adjustments to Asian students while inflating others.
He calls this civilizational sabotage disguised as compassion.
It's a systematic dismantling of meritocracy. And to avoid public pushback, Riker argues the left uses linguistic traps, like the phrase toxic masculinity.
He traces that to 90s feminist studies, but says it functions exactly like Soviet agitprop.
Agitation propaganda designed to manipulate public emotion. He believes toxic masculinity is engineered to pathologize natural male competitiveness.
They brand the biological drive that built the railroads and went to the moon as a poison.
Trying to shame men into apathy. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Riker offers a tactical playbook to fight back.
But he explicitly advises against traditional academic debate.
Right, he says don't bother writing a peer-reviewed rebuttal. Logic won't save you from a virus. He advocates for rhetorical jujitsu.
Using weaponized humor and absurdity.
The theory is that the opposing framework is so reliant on moral posturing that it collapses when mirrored with sheer absurdity.
He gives the example of the soy face meme to mock beta male compliance.
Or photoshopping attack helicopters onto corporate LinkedIn profiles to mock infinite gender identities. He calls it epistemological warfare.
Reframe their rhetoric through the lens of the absurd until the farce is exposed.
But beyond the internet battles, there is a very tangible physical warning in this book regarding media ownership.
This is a crucial pivot. Riker views the push toward digital-only media and cloud subscription models as corporate hostage-taking.
This part is wild because every single one of us deals with this. Imagine waking up tomorrow and a movie you paid $30 for is just deleted from your account.
You don't own it, just a revocable license.
And he brings receipts. Sony's 2021 PlayStation Store purge erased 1,300 digital titles.
Ubisoft deactivating the servers for the crew. A $60 game completely unplayable because hedge funds decided it wasn't profitable to maintain.
He also mentions Google Stadia's collapse. A buddy of his bought Cyberpunk 2077 digitally on Stadia, and when Google killed the service, that $60 purchase evaporated.
Riker contrasts this digital fragility with popping a cartridge into a Sega Genesis 30 years later. You turn it on, it works. No internet, no corporate oversight.
For Riker, physical media is bulletproof.
It's the ultimate armor against ideological censorship. Tech companies can patch out problematic themes from a digital library overnight, but they cannot take a physical disc off your shelf.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a tremendous amount of ground here.
From video game armor to evolutionary biology and the KGB to the death of the disk drive.
Synthesizing Riker's work, he presents a hyper-focused, combative worldview. The loss of hardcore gaming isn't just a hobby changing.
It's the early warning sign of a broader Marxist and feminist takeover of Western institutions and biological truth.
He sees the preservation of male spaces as the front line of cultural resistance. Every classic, unapologetic game played on physical media is an act of defiance.
It's an intense look into the history of these captured institutions from the Manosphere's perspective.
Absolutely. Now, if this deep dive hooked you and you want to see exactly how he connects all these dots across history, biology, and pop culture, you really need to buy the ebook.
Check out Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books to purchase Gaming Male Spaces Before Gamergate Woke Betrayal.
And definitely follow the author at Conrad Riker on Substack for his ongoing commentary. Also, please remember to like and subscribe to this show so we can keep bringing you these deep dives.
I will leave you with one final thought to mull over. Riker warns that those who control the digital platforms control history. He makes a compelling case that physical media is the ultimate rebellion against ideological erasure. But if physical media is our only armor against institutional capture,
Right.
what happens to cultural resistance when the very hardware we rely on to play, read, and learn is manufactured without a disk drive at all?